welcome to the first ever episode of Historical Analysis Puppet Theatre. I am your host, Dr. Charity Flint, Professor of all things swashbuckling. Today on our program we will take a journey backwards through time to hear several intoxicating interviews from some prominent and some not so prominent members of society in an age of smuggling, swaggering, and sugar trading, the decades directly prior to the American Revolution or War for Independence. And now, from rum to revolution, how a byproduct of industrial waste led to the formation of the United States of America, Part 1. You distill your own rum on this island, is that correct?
Yes, I own one of several still houses on Barbados, and do quite well for it.
How lovely. Did you know that the oldest documented continuously functioning distillery in the world is the Mount Gay Distillery right here in Barbados?
How lovely! How delightful! Barbados is actually also home to the first documented uses of the term kill devil, an old word for rum, and the term rum itself. The term has been in use since as early as 1652, when a visitor reported that the chief bubbling they make in the island is rumbillion, alias kill devil, and this is made of sugar canes.
Intriguing! Well, the visitor was right. Rum is made from sugar canes, or at least from the waste products created in the sugar refining process. How exactly does a Barbadian distiller make rum?
It's quite simple, really. First mix the black scum garnered from the top of sugar boiling. The dregs from a finished still of sugar boiling, also known as lees or dunder, and the water used to clean the sugar boiling pots in a large cistern. Leave this liquid called wash in the heat to ferment. When bubblings begin to appear, mix in 6 gallons of molasses, also from the sugar refining process, for every 100 gallons of wash. Leave it to ferment for several days. Be wary though, if the wash gets too hot or too cold, fermentation will stop or at the very least slow down. So the temperature needs to be closely regulated. This can be achieved by methods such as opening and closing windows or adding hot or cold water or sun. Also, regulate the acidity with lemons, tartar, coal, or ashes. When the wash temperature drops and bubbling stops, prepare for the distillation process.
Please describe this process for our viewers.
Several inches from the bottom of the cistern are taps through which the wash flows into the still. This ensures that the sediment at the bottom of the cistern stays in the bottom of the cistern. Light and even low fire beneath the main vat of the pot still. The steam should then go up through the worm, copper tubing, which must be cooled at all times so that the steam will condense. Sometimes a stream is diverted around the worm to keep the temperature down. The resulting spirit may be consumed straight away or distilled once more, depending on the distiller's taste.
As a Member of Parliament and an absentee British West Indies sugar planter, please explain why you voted in favour of the 1733 Molasses Act.
Well, it's quite obvious, old chap. Look, I'm a British sugar planter. My compatriots in the West Indies expect me to represent their interests. What? So, to appease my compatriots, I voted in favour. However, to appease the rabble colonists in New England, I clearly was not in favour of enforcing the act. Rather clever of me, don't you think?
So let me get this straight now. You want to appease the West Indies planters, of which you are one, and you want to appease the New England colonists, of which you are clearly not one, Why would you want to appease both of them?
Well, it's rather clever, old boy. If I vote in favor of the act, but don't actually enforce it, I leave the door open to acquire cheaper rum from the New Englanders without immediately upsetting the British sugar planters. By Jove.
Well, Lord Malcolm, I must admit that I'm still rather confused. You passed the Molasses Act in 1733 without the intent of ever enforcing it, but then in 1764 you voted in favour of the Sugar Act, which called for a much more stringent enforcement, albeit at a lesser tariff rate per gallon than called for in the Molasses Act. Why?
Well, my dear, I must say that we really didn't expect matters to get so bloody well out of hand.
How so?
Well, it is a morbid tale of lies and deceit, smuggling and corruption. Are you sure that you are quite up to this, my dear?
Oh yes, tell me more.
Tell me more, tell me more.
Well, frankly, it all began on a cold, dark night in 1764. New England bribery of customs officials and smuggling of cheap molasses from the French West Indies ran rampant. Well, that uppity bloke, Lord Grenville, Chancellor of the Exchequer, you know the one, being the pompous buffoon that he indubitably is, insisted upon strict enforcement of the Molasses Act. My learned colleagues in Parliament decided that it would be most appropriate to legislate a new act, aptly named the American Revenue Act, also referred to as the Sugar Act, which, of course, is much more refined than that lowly molasses. Don't you think, eh? What?
Oh, yes indeed, quite right. Do please enumerate for our viewers the specifications of the Sugar Act.
The primary components of the Act consisted of a lower tariff per gallon of foreign molasses imported into the North American colonies, reduced from 6 pence to a mere 3 pence. However, Lord Grenville, in his dubiously infinite wisdom, insisted on a strict enforcement of the Act. Smugglers would be dealt with most harshly, colonists engaging in bribery and customs officials accepting bribes would receive sentences and fines commensurate with their crimes. For example, if a merchant failed to get and retain customs certificates from his port of departure and present them to the customs officials at his port of arrival, he would be forced to forfeit no less than £100 per offence.